Star Trek, the ultimate franchise. These are the voyages of 3 veteran Trekkies, Rich, Ian, and Toby. Their ongoing mission? To explore the vast Star Trek universe, to seek out new perspectives and fresh debates, to boldly go where no podcast has gone before. Beyond the Final Frontier.
Welcome to Beyond the Final Frontier. Hello, my name is Rich Matthews, I'm your host, and as ever for this little trek through Star Trek history, we have my co-host, Mr. Ian Spelling.
Hello, everybody.
And Mr. Toby Weidman.
Hello.
In this episode, we're very lucky to be joined by an ex-colleague and an old friend for all 3 of us, and in fact, welcome another Star Trek editor and writer to the podcast, Mr. Paul Simpson.
Hello.
So today's episode, we're going to do a rundown of our favourite Romulan episodes across all of Star Trek, as ever limiting to the TV shows at this point, not including any film appearances. And we'll run round the group and discuss as we go our numerous differences and overlaps and shared passions. As we ask all of our guests on the pod, can you just tell us what your first personal experience with Star Trek was?
It would be when I was about 8 or 9, and I went away on a course for young musicians, and in the evenings we were allowed to watch telly. And the episode that was on was The Doomsday Machine. And that section with Kirk on the bridge of the Constellation, waiting to be beamed off, just absolutely just got me at that moment. And I knew that I had seen the James Blish books in the local library. So I went and got out, and I think it was Star Trek 3. It's the one with Tribbles in anyway. And that was it. And then I watched the episodes and I loved them. And then, of course, we got new Trek very quickly then in this country with the animated series. I think it was about a year behind the States. I can't remember, but it's somewhere around there. So there was actually 22 new episodes, and then those absolutely brilliant Alan Dean Foster logs, which are still some of my favourite Star Trek literature, and the novels that came out before the motion picture. So that got me into it, and I just loved it. I remember going to the motion picture up in London and then reading the novelisation of Wrath of Khan on a bus coming back from college. And this was, remember that Wrath of Khan over here premiered a long time after it had in the States. So the book I'd got at Forbidden Planet, quick plug there for Titan.
We'll cut that out.
And reading about Spock's death in the Vonda McIntyre novelisation, and it just made me realise Star Trek was part of my life, and then it just has been. And I collected, up until very recently, all of the books, and obviously then somehow got inveigled into following in the footsteps of the great Mr. Weidman and Mr. Jones and Mr. Rob, etc., 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 running the mag for 5 years.
Excellent.
And we have the word of the day already, inveigled.
Inveigled. At least it's not me that gets it this time.
Yeah, no, Paul. Thumbs up, baby.
Yeah. As we now inveigle some Romulans into our discussion, it's actually, the Romulans is an interesting one. I've realised that of all the aliens, for me, they've not been a massive focus for me. So I'll be very curious to see what everyone's picked. So, Paul, if you're game, if you'd like to kick off with one of your favourite Romulan episodes.
Well, let's kick off with the obvious one. I don't think we can't, which is Balance of Terror. It's
my number 2.
Yeah, it's just, first off, it's a great piece of television. It's a great piece of Star Trek. There are so many things in it that were contradicted or changed as the series grew. But as somebody who has been involved with chronicling television history for the last 3 decades, one of the fascinating things is watching a show develop. And Balance of Terror These are Earth outposts. All of these little things that aren't quite what we think they are. And we realise as well in this story, perhaps more than many of the others beforehand, just how many of the human failings have gone out there. So although the Romulans are the focal point in terms of the A plot, we have the bigotry on board, or on the bridge of the Enterprise, and we also have the way in which the commander of the Romulans is treated by his own people. So you have got in there, Paul Scheider has done a fantastic job of balancing, pardon the pun, these not so terrible ideas and making it that something that you could actually pretty much do as a play if you just split the stage in half or did it on 2 tiers and make it work as an episode. And it's interesting that I watched for this the remastered version, because that project was going on during my time on STM, so I went and watched the guys doing the work on that, which was absolutely fascinating. But go back into the original episode and it really is just some effects that needed bringing into the early 21st century. The power of it stays going right the way through from when it was first broadcast.
It's a very three-dimensional representation of both sides.
Yes.
I think that's what makes it stand apart, isn't it? I mean, obviously it's Mark Leonard who becomes Sarek, but the way that's presented is the fact he's weary of war and he's honourable and he's facing internal challenges, and that sort of mirroring of good versus evil in inverted commas. It was very Star Trek. Wasn't it?
I think this is, there's an old cliche, and I'm sure you've heard this one, Ian, many times. The show sort of finds its feet on episode 7 or episode 8, or certainly in the days when we were talking about shows with 22, 26 seasons, which is what it was like when I was sort of in the game. This is, as I said, one of those where you really find it, where they find their storytelling mojo, for want of but there must be a better word. There's got to be thousands of better words, but it'll do.
They're creative.
Juicy.
I don't know. Now my mind's gone blank.
But it is actually that moment that things fall into place. The acting is there. There are the moments from Shatner. I mean, that moment from Nimoy. We get this whole thing about that they turn around. Leonard turns around on the view screen and they realise, oh my God, the Romulans and the Vulcans look the same. Watch Nimoy's reaction. Stars' reaction is what we expect. Bill Shatner's is what we expect. Nimoy is almost, ooh, now that's interesting. And you can almost chart everything from the 2009 movie back to that moment. Because that's the moment that he realizes that these are his, in inverted commas, family, racially. And
cousins.
And everything goes through right the way from that. You see it a little bit in Enterprise Incident, but you certainly see it in his appearances in the 24th century.
Excellent, good choice.
I think the importance of this episode is to me. I mean, I think I agree with everything that you've said, because this is also on my list. But it's the fact that this is the first introduction to the Romulans. They weren't really explored in the original series, but it made such a memorable impact that it kind of seemed almost inevitable that they would bring them back in the next generation, where they were explored far more than probably any of the other series. I would say there was a lot more episodes with featuring the Romulans. But interestingly, also that how the Romulans were portrayed changed quite dramatically between original series and next gen. They almost kind of flipped the Klingon and Romulan. Like the Klingons were a little bit more devious and aggressive in the original series, and the Romulans were the ones who were kind of like the honourable, based on Roman Empire kind of aspect, which they still kept aspects of, but then they sort of flipped it to make the Klingons the noble warriors and the Romulans the sneaky ones, right? So it's the lasting impact of this episode. I think that's the most important.
And I think the other thing that to bear in mind for the difference between 60s Trek and 80s Trek is that you had, for the Romulans, that fantastic exploration of them by Diane Duane and Peter Morwood, the Rihansu books that very much showed what the Romulans could be. And some of the way that they're portrayed in Next Gen is a reaction to those books as well. And, I still genuinely think those are a better portrayal of them, because I think it gave them more of an identity, whereas as we get later on, I'm not convinced, and I'm certainly not convinced by their big screen appearances, that they are anything other than that. Oh, let's go and do the Romans again, as Doctor Who does, and as every Sliders did, and every flipping sci-fi series of that period did. I think if we continue with the Romulans we saw in Balance of Terror and Enterprise Incident, they could have been more interesting in the Next Gen period, but
fewer shoulder pads.
Joan Collins wanted them back. What can I say?
Balance of Terror, again, we weren't technically ranking, we're doing favorites. So if I was ranking, Balance of Terror is number one in my book. It's funny, in my notes I used the word great Star Trek, great drama, great television, very much echoing what you just said, Paul. Sublime performances from Shatner and Nimoy, but I think we also need to credit Mark Leonard and Lawrence Montaigne. They were ridiculously stoic and gave us what ended up being the template for Romulans. Regardless of the direction future writers, directors, and actors took the characters and the species, let's say, but they established that stoic look, that the eyebrows, the makeup, all of that really was retained for much of Star Trek going forward. Paul, to your point about doing this as a play, my note, I even have chamber piece. So much of it felt like two-handers, three-handers. And I thought it was just beautifully rendered. It was probably, other than the sets, pretty close to what would amount to, at the time, a bottle episode, because there were not a ton of people involved. And I think a lot of credit needs to go to Paul Schneider, who's a name we do not hear very often in Star Trek, actually, who wrote the episode. And what's amazing to me always is that he also wrote one of our favorite other episodes with Trelane, right? Squire of Gothos. So always interesting to me. Absolutely, just visually, the music, everything in this episode clicks. And if you say to me, what's an episode you want to sit and watch? Again, for a variety of reasons, it's this episode.
And the Romulan warbird looks absolutely cool as well. I mean, we mentioned that in the ship episode.
How cool a ship is that? It's so stark and angular and...
Well, great. That's awesome. So I think my first favourite is going to be slightly more divisive. This one was sort of jostled with for position in my affection with... I almost put the enemy in, or the neutral zone, but I didn't. So I'm very curious to see what people think. I'm going to put forward Face of the Enemy.
Me too.
That's my number 3, Rich.
Yeah. There we are. Excellent.
Yeah.
Good. You never know with Troy episodes. People can be a bit all over the place, can't they?
Well, hang on a second. In this one, Marina acts in this one.
They let her act. Are you saying that she can't act?
No,
that she doesn't get the opportunity
I think
to
it's
act.
a combination of two. I think when Marina's given good material and good direction, she can produce a great performance. And that proves it. That's one of the ones I would say, this proves she can do it.
Yeah, and she's fantastic in the episode. And for me...
she's back in England. She's going to come after you.
Yeah, so Paul Simpson can be reached at...
I mean, if you want some support there, Paul, I wrote a good episode for Troy, and there are a precious few of those. Usually she ends up in some stupid alien romance. Here she actually gets something to do.
Yeah, the thing that I would focus on is the thing I alluded to before, which is, while I quite like what Next Gen did with the Romulans, mainly because I'm not, unlike the three of you, I'm less of a TOS guy. But the thing I never understood, I've had that so far, every episode, I get that.
Unlike Nicholas Meyer, he's not seen every episode of the original.
I have.
Have you now? Have you?
Yes.
Okay.
All 79
Can't you
of them.
tell from the slightly glazed... Oh, no, hang on.
Yeah. The thing that the Next Gen I'll never get over, and I alluded to it before, is the outfit and the design of the alien. I thought it felt like when they redesigned the Romulans, they shackled them with this vaguely ridiculous look. The reason that's important for this episode is it's often the actors overcoming that obstacle. And so when you have someone like Andreas Katsulas, of course, that sort of natural gravitas just beams through whatever layer of prosthetics you put over him. But in this case, I was genuinely worried that Marina would have been buried by the makeup and unable to compensate. But she's brilliant at it. And you realise that actually all that time sort of being kept in the Troy box that they kept her in for ages, not giving her very many opportunities and some thankless dialogue. And I mean, it evolved obviously as we went along, but from the first few seasons, first season particularly, that she actually had assimilated the way that sort of could help performance. So when she's in, her character is in a similar situation in this, it's just beautifully rendered by her, and she can seem authoritative. She can take on all the sort of complexity of someone undercover, and also simultaneously is a great surrogate for revealing the dynamic of the Tel Shiar and how they fit within the Romulans' culture in general. And when you paired her with Caroline Seymour, just a great pairing. And the sniping between the pair and everything is just really brilliant. And it's just tense and we had surgical things done willy-nilly in the end by now in Star Trek. People are surgically altered all the time, and on Strange New Worlds it's become like, an injection, isn't it? So it's but this really, you really felt Surtees was really good at communicating the horror of it, and then the alienness of the culture and everything that was in there. So for me, this was one of my favourite Romulan episodes. It was one of my favourite political intrigue episodes, especially on Next Gen. I mean, DS9 knocks all of that out of the park brilliantly, but at this point, it was a real highlight for me.
I think that's some of my parameters for this was what is good television, and we're looking back at episodes that were made, 30 plus years ago. I mean, heading for 40, when we're talking about that TNG DS9 era, and they still hold up now. And that's not something that you can say about the vast majority of the stuff that we covered in those days. Mm-hmm. And you had, Face the Enemy, I loved the idea when I was doing a bit of reading around on this, that Naren Shankar wanted to bring back the Romulan commander from the Enterprise incident to play the commander here, which I think would have been wonderful, seeing that, comparing the scenes with Kirk and whatever. But
was that Joanne
Linville? Linville.
Thank you.
Not as the same character. That wouldn't have worked because of the age.
No. Just bringing it back. No, just no. It wouldn't be. No, just a nice piece of stunt casting, basically. But Caroline Seymour, that moment when she's talking, when it's the dinner table scene where she's talking to Deanna about her father being taken away, you're suddenly taking Trek Next Gen out of its little sci-fi bubble that it's existed in far, far, far too much. And it went back to what the original series did more, and which the later shows certainly, Disco does it with a very heavy hand, but, these political commentaries and these things, and you've got that element that makes good Star Trek hold up, when our kids are a long way down the line.
I'm going with unification with the two-parter. More part 1 than part 2. But look, you had the Romulan seeking peace. You had Spock in it. I know, not a Romulan, okay? We had Mark Leonard back as Sarek, and they killed him. They had the balls to kill him. Again, I know he's a Vulcan, okay? But just in terms of what worked in this episode. Then you had Denise Crosby as Sela, as a Romulan. People were flipping out, right? It was unbelievable. Yes, it looked like, she stole an outfit from Miami Vice with the shoulder pads and the whole 9 yards. But what a sleek-looking character she ended up being, and how important as well. You had Picard looking like a Romulan, and pretty convincingly. No question that part 1, even though we only get the cameo from Nimoy at the end, is the better episode than part 2, where we have more Nimoy. But to me, that episode, I watched it again, knowing that we were going to do this. I watched both episodes again. Definitely re-imprinted on me how much better part 1 was than part 2 when you separate the Nimoy factor from it. And I loved that it was a good piece, and this is a business end of the equation. This was good cross-promotion for Star Trek VI and Star Trek The Next Generation. Remember, nobody thought The Next Generation was going to work, including most of the people involved with the original series. So to have this, that was like almost first contact being accepted. I don't mean the movie or the episode. I mean just in terms of, here's the original series now really embracing The Next Generation.
Yeah, nice 25th anniversary treat, wasn't it?
Yeah, for a lot of reasons, Unification, two-parter, is up there, way high for me.
The first half of it, I kind of didn't consider it a Romulan episode, and then the second half of it, I feel the focus is so much on Spock and who Spock is interacting with. Again, I say I'm probably wrong. Probably wrong in that, but I just felt the focus was more on having Spock interact with Picard and Data, and that's the reason why it's not in my list.
I think for me, my problem with Unification Part 1 is that it's like those old Doctor Who episodes from the 60s where a cast member was on holiday and they get the story absolutely as far as they can, and they're going to stop there because, we actually need him here. It does feel like there's some treading water getting there.
That's why it's not in mine. Is it feels baggy. But I don't disagree. But I disagree with Toby. Sorry, go on.
What I was going to say was that it was on my list because I think the Romulans' biggest addition to the Star Trek universe is the whole Romulan-Vulcan thing. And that's a thread that goes right the way through, as I said, from Balance of Terror right the way through to the stuff we're getting now. I rewatched for my crimes Unification 3. Actually, I can't say that. Kirsten Bayer's an old friend, and I think it's a good Discovery episode, but that's balanced by the fact it's a Discovery episode, and people have got to cry at least 500 times during it. But it did actually. When that came on, I thought, why are they calling it Unification 3? And at the time, I hadn't rewatched the first two for a bit. But you actually watched that after watching these two, and you realised that a lot of the stuff that was being talked about was possible, could happen, and how much the Romulans, even on Nivar, the Romulans and the Vulcans are two very different people. And that comes across in part 2. Yes, Toby, you're absolutely right. It's a Spock episode. It's the whole cowboy diplomacy things. It's, let's compare Data with Spock and whatever. But there's a lot in there where you see how Spock... You can see what Spock saw in the Romulans, I suppose is what I'm getting at.
Well, there's more to it than that. So what I was going to say was, along that, is that I think it was very clever to use Sarek's condition to to bridge the two species in people's minds and for Spock, in the sense that this is a Vulcan in full throes of his emotions, and in the middle is Spock, who's interacting with Romulans, who are the emotional cousins of the Vulcans. And I thought that was a very clever commentary on the nature, especially with Spock's half-human side. And as we've mentioned previously, that Saavik was originally written to be half Romulan, and that was never explored on screen, at least. So while it's not on my list because I think it's a baggy piece of, I think it's an early fan service episode. For all the reasons, it's not unsuccessful, but it's just a bit too long for me. But I do think it's a Romulan episode for that reason, which is you're looking at what the Romulans, the Vulcans, their lineage, their legacy, how they coexist, and Sarek, a Vulcan, suffering through emotions, is a perfect vehicle for that.
Yep.
So my criteria for this was really, I didn't pick my favourites, which involve the Romulans. So there's episodes like The Next Phase, which I absolutely love, and The Drumhead, which has got a Romulan aspect to it, which I haven't included. I kind of picked episodes that revealed something about the Romulan world or society or something like, which is why I Face the Enemy, because it's the introduction of the Tal Shiar, as we mentioned. Apart from my first pick, which has got nothing really to do with that at all, I just love it because it's a really fun episode, and that's Voyager's Message in a Bottle. When we did our favourite guest stars, and I was deciding on my 7th spot, and eventually I went for Frank Gorshin, I did almost pick Andy Dick as the EMH Mark II, because I just think, I'm not a huge fan of Andy Dick, but he's just great in this role. I love the interaction between the two EMHs. I think it's a really fun episode, pitting them against the Romulans, and ultimately, whether by fluke or good judgment, they actually managed to overcome them. But yeah, I just this is the only pick of the Romulan episodes where I've not gone with something that is sort of important. It's just a fun episode, basically.
Well, the Doctor ones always were. Yeah, Bob Picardo would not not unknowingly underplay a script if it was based around the Doctor. And he loved the job.
Any script.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, there is that. But I mean, Ian, I'm sure you chatted with Bob many times on set and whatever. That you see his eyes light up when he talks about episodes that actually go back to what the EMH is meant to be. I think the problem with Voyager, and it's to an extent the problem with Discovery in the 31st century or 32nd, whatever it's supposed to be, is that they were away from a lot of the familiar patterns. But you've got the amount of sorts of, for these sorts of things, there's lots of things that you can't use Voyager for, and you could see the writers going, well, how are we going to get the Romulans in? How are we going to get these species involved? And it's an inventive way of doing it.
Great. So, Paul?
I'll go with the one I've sort of jumped in now with, which is the flip side of Balance of Terror, which is Strange New Worlds, Quality of Mercy.
Mm-hmm.
I remember watching that at the time and thinking, why doesn't Paul Scheider get a credit on it? Which is one of the most egregious errors that 21st century Trek has made. It's unusual for them to drop the ball like that, but there is so much of Scheider in there, both in actual dialogue, but plotting and everything like that. But it's also very interesting in terms of comparing the way the Romulans have been looked at since Encounter at Farpoint to how they were looked at in the original series. Because the Romulans in Quality of Mercy are not the Romulans from Balance of Terror. They are the new Romulans. Particularly once you get to the scene where you've got the Praetor arriving with the ships and all of that. We lose so much of the stuff on board the Romulan ship because obviously it's Strange New Worlds, so it's focusing on Pike and Kirk. But you don't. There is that marvellous moment when Mark Leonard turns and says, "We could have been friends," and boy, did they miss a trick. James Frayne should have played the Romulan commander on Strange New Worlds had the same Sarek doing it. I think that would have been just a lovely little moment. And he was around, he's around. But you don't feel that moment is earned in Quality of Mercy as it is earned in Balance of Terror. But what it does do is that the way the Romulans are presented in this is very much how would it have been if that Balance of Terror was written as a TNG episode. I love it. I think it's one of Strange New World's best episodes, certainly in the early days. And it's really interesting to see how they worked out the influence that Kirk had. But,
I think that's the key thing, isn't it? It's like this episode for me, it just shows how important Kirk is.
Yeah, which is...
Pike's a great character, but Kirk is, he's the one.
Well, I presume you've seen that fake pocketbooks cover of what the hell are you doing on my ship? And it's Pike looking at Kirk. This is... Sorry, this is...
Isn't it, why are you always on my ship?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I love... Strange New Worlds is, for me, the best by a long way of the modern Trek series.
Yeah, agreed.
I think that...
Until season 3.
Yeah, season 3's got a lot of problems, but certainly those first
No
two.
spoilers, please. I'm not there yet.
Obviously in that episode where they... and they
that's the difference. I think for me that's the issue with modern Trek, Bronze Age, whatever you want to call it. It is the general drama problem with most content, which is over serialization. Everything's too connected, and even though Star Trek has great examples of balancing that, DS9 being the primary model of doing both well, I think they've don't know quite how to get themselves out of where they are now. And case in point, that you said about things being earned in Balance of Terror, because that's how they did it.
Yeah.
Every episode had to be a complete story. Strange New Worlds, you can feel the system, and the writers who've grown up through the system are very much in the streaming world, fighting urges to lay down pipe, to signal things, to point this way and that way. And that's why things feel less earned, because they feel they have to resort to higher emotions sometimes to get drama, because they're not as confident in that unit, the beginning, middle, and end of each episode.
So what's your next pick, Rich?
Ooh. So what's my next pick? Well, I'm mirroring it to a degree. Mine is the Enterprise incident. That's what I put in. So, and then I've realised, as I'm looking at my list, and that way often happens when I'm looking at the list on my screen as we're talking it through, is, wow, I've chosen 2 in a row which are all about female commanders and stuff.
What does this tell us, sir?
Yes. I love grey area drama, increasingly as I get older as well, because as we live in a world which tends to go for algorithm-driven black and white division, the thing that Roddenberry, for all of his period-specific context where he had flaws and was a chauvinist and all the stuff which could be explained away because when he was born, when he was raised, when he lived. But essentially, the heart of what he did was compassion, empathy, and intellectual curiosity. And the Romulan episodes, both of them, Balance of Terror and Enterprise Incident, as companions, exemplify that philosophy. And also the sheer fact that the commander is a woman. That, as and when it happened in season 3, even though it's the very beginning of season 3, wasn't it? But still, even in the 3rd season in 1969, that's still a massive deal. That you follow up Balance of Terror to some degree with Joanne Linville as the commander, and she is intelligent, sophisticated, complex. I mean, the only downside of that is probably that if I was Nichelle, I'd be a bit grumpy that a woman gets to come in and do that. But it works on so many levels.
Yes, I mean, and it's the whole thing about Vulcans can't lie. It builds out from that one. I mean, what's interesting, I was listening to you guys' conversations about the last episodes. However many millennia ago you did that. And this is the same season that then gave us Turnabout Intruder.
Ironically, yeah.
Yeah, and but it's a season that's being overseen by Freeberger rather than by Roddenberry. But No, I mean, Enterprise Incident, I mean, okay, it is also responsible for perhaps the two worst pieces of Star Trek fiction ever created, which is The Price of the Phoenix and The Fate of the Phoenix by Sandra Marshak and Mina Culbreath, which were two of the early Bantam stroke Corgi books, which basically had this evil creation called Omne, who created a clone of Jim Kirk in order to give it to the Romulan commander. Hijinks follow, as they say. But yeah, so I can almost forgive it for that. But it has got, as you say, you've got those moments with a female commander where she is clearly there on merit. It's not just being done for the sake of, oh, let's put a female, captain or whatever. And it makes it work. Again, it makes it work as television. And look at the context, as you're saying, 1969, this was not a common thing. In this funny way, it's almost this.
And let's also credit Joanne Linville's performance, which was complemented by an incredible outfit. The costume that she got to wear was awesome. And the makeup was so severe and interesting. So I thought her performance, complemented by the direction, complemented by all of the behind-the-scenes production work that goes into making a character look different, was all spot on in that episode.
Yeah, I was going to say, if that in that episode, if they had made the commander a man, obviously the whole story would have gone in a very different direction in terms of Spock and
would have been even more progressive.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Enterprise Incident is on my list as well. Kirk as a Romulan was awesome. Joanne Linville, as we've discussed, I thought was brilliant for the reasons I mentioned. Spock outsmarts the Romulans. And I thought that was really cool storytelling, brilliantly told. The episode works. And it stands the test of time as well. It's still an exciting episode to watch. It's smart science fiction. It's smart drama. And it's good use of our characters and especially a guest star. Paul, as you probably noticed, some of the my colleagues here talk more thematically. I tend to, look at the episodes in terms of, do they stand the test of time?
Yeah.
Music, all that kind of stuff. It's interesting how we come at what attracts us to an episode. It's one of the things I've been enjoying about this process is, the social intrigue is always interesting to me, but I like to, no pun intended here, balance that with, does the episode hold up? Were the performances noted? How did the artists behind the scenes impact what we're ultimately seeing in the performances the actors are
you
giving?
saying when I talk about masks, you're not going to be supportive?
No, I will not be.
Or justice.
So anyway, Enterprise Incident, my list as well.
I'm assuming you are going to do a podcast on the worst episodes of Star Trek.
Once we're established, yes. We're a little right now. We are supporting our beloved Star Trek. When the time comes, then we'll shit on the episodes and movies. That
positive until we don't have to be.
No, okay. Challenge for you guys. Find the ones that are generally regarded as the 6 worst episodes, and find something to praise in them.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's doable.
Yeah, I mean that's my
I love the idea.
That's my editor brain going straight. How do you do something that you don't want to shit on, but do it in a way that actually
glass half full episode?
Yeah, basically.
Star Trek V is the easy example. I mean, the campfire scene is awesome, right? I love the bit.
I love hearing somebody
on the
dig
side
themselves
of the
into a hole.
Save it for the next
what
episode.
Does God need with a
save
starship?
it for the next episode.
Wait. If we ask the question, what are some of the most memorable lines? Just lines of dialogue. What does God need with the starship?
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Come on. There is at least one.
If only they'd added a question, we go, aren't you an admiral? That would have been fine.
Yeah. All right.
Meanwhile,
Anybody else?
Uh,
Right, back at the ranch.
my next pick, and I imagine no one has this on their list. It's a triple episode from Enterprise. It's Babel 1, United, and the Enar. And the reason I picked this again is I know there are problems continuity-wise in terms of the cloaking device. Let's not go into that. But for me, what stands out about this episode, this 3-part story, is that it's the Romulans who essentially are the major catalyst for the foundation of the UFP. It's because they are concerned with the growing alliance between the Andorians, Vulcans, Earthlings, Tellarites, etc., that they set about destabilizing it with this sort of crazy ship that can transform through holograms into appearing to be the enemy ships. And they're trying to build this political discord, but because they fail, their ruse is revealed by the Enterprise and the Andorians. It essentially confirms that they need the United Federation of Planets as a group of people that can stand up to the Romulan Empire. So that's why this is in there, because I think it's just an important episode in terms of like building the opposing side to the Romulans. But I imagine no one else has got this in their list.
I'd love to say you were wrong, but
I think
We always say he's wrong. No, you're totally right.
I mean, this is what. But,
Even a broken clock is right twice a day. Toby, come on.
no, I mean, we come back with that. What you were saying there about it, it's setting that up in universe as part of the UFP. But this is where Enterprise actually started doing the job of setting up the world of Star Trek that we were discussing a few minutes ago. That SNW is, perhaps dropping the ball or making it too obvious. And that was where I always thought Enterprise worked. And I can remember
It's at its best in the fourth season, for sure.
And the thing about that as well is that I went on set at the beginning of September 2001. Ruth and I went on and we interviewed Michael Westmore and we saw the bridge and everything like that. And they were talking about what season 1 of Enterprise was going to be at that stage. What we got in season 4 was much closer to what they originally wanted to do. And then 9/11 changed everything. And I think if 9/11, obviously if 9/11 hadn't happened, so much would be different. But I think that Enterprise could have been that prequel series that we thought it was going to be, and that those sort of episodes did, much earlier than we got it.
I mean, I've said on this pod before, I think I'm a bigger fan of Enterprise than Rich and Ian. I like the series, but partly that is because I was covering that when I was working on the magazine. So it has kind of like a special place in my heart.
I need to revisit it. I think I haven't revisited it post Discovery on, and I suspect my reception of it will be different.
Yes, I would agree. I think you'll see a lot of things in there that you didn't expect. And it still has one of my favourite two-parters ever of all Star Trek, which is the Mirror Universe ones. I mean, that was just, you can do this. Why weren't you doing these production values? Why weren't you getting these performances earlier than in your penultimate one? And the ones with Peter Weller, the Earth First stuff.
I'm a little torn between which one to go with, but again, we're not ranking them. I'm gonna go with a Quality of Mercy here. It was an exciting episode to watch. It was inventive. If you're going to dip into the well as heavily in fan service and nostalgia, do it as well as A Quality of Mercy did it. You got Paul Wesley as Kirk, and I loved the details from the ship, from the costumes, from the performances, from the dialogue, as you mentioned, Paul, the Schneider dialogue going on in there. I even loved the little bits of stuff that you really had to pay attention to catch, like Pike was performing a wedding
Yeah.
Well, Kirk was performing
but
a wedding.
but it's supposed to be the same time. Yeah, I mean, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not the details. That's plot. That's plot nicking from the original template. I mean,
Which I was fine with, but it really worked in this particular instance. I thought it was a gimmick that worked as an entire episode. Let's put it that way.
I felt that we all enjoyed it, I think.
Yeah.
Well, it's one of those episodes which is the reason that for until season 3 we're all trumpeting Strange New Worlds as the return.
Yeah.
Agreed.
For that very sort of episode. So my the first of my 2 remaining is The Defector.
Okay.
Good choice.
That's my last one as well.
There you go.
This was in my second spot.
That was number 7 for me if I was going to go to 7.
6
Yeah,
or
so
7. Yeah.
Obviously, we've got Tomalok back again, but also used in a slightly more, in a way which I guess I would associate with the Romulans by this point, which is it's a lot of as you've alluded to about the flip from between 60s Romulans and 80s Romulans, where in this case 90s Romulans just. I think it was actually the 1st of January, 1990 when they aired this, but that it's all about double crossing, triple crossing, layers upon layers of political intrigue and interweaving. But at the core of it are some it's a really good challenge for Picard, trying to sift through all this and see the through line, but also the way that is it James Sloyan played Sloyan, thank you, played Admiral Jarok. That's interesting, I think, and I've gone back and forth on how much I like the episode based on him alone, and ultimately over time I've landed on the fact that the sort of psychological warfare that's being conducted with him at the centre of it is really, really exciting in a way. It does separate it from a lot of the other species, a little more the Romulans, and that comes into play what my final choice is, in the fact that it's weaving tapestries of deceit rather than brute force, and yeah, it's in the end. To go back to something you said, Ian, before, which is, I should say, I guess I'm making an assumption. It's always a given for me that I think an episode I like, no matter whether how thematic it is, that it's still good and stands the test of time. But this one walks that line. It feels very much on the cusp of that. It's a very season 3 Next Gen episode where it's nearly great, but some of it still feels a bit season 2-y. But ultimately, for what it does for a lot of my feelings about the Romulans from this point on are based on this episode.
I put this is the first really great TNG Romulan episode. There had been episodes before that, but this is the one which really stands out in my mind. In fact, when we was doing this list, Balance of Terror was first on my list straight away. This was the one I thought of second. I just went straight to this one.
You know, it's interesting you said that, Toby. When I think of Romulans, like if I just close my eyes and think of Romulans, the first thing that comes to mind is Balance of Terror, right?
Yeah, same.
Just the imagery of the ship, as you had mentioned, and then just Mark Leonard when we see him, I thought was brilliant. But then if I close my eyes again and I think, okay, what's the next one? It's actually Denise Crosby as Sela. So it's just the visual that pops up into my head. It's funny how that works.
It's interesting because like Redemption was something that I thought about because I love Redemption. I think it's a great 2-parter.
It is, yeah.
But that one for me it's a Klingon episode for me. It's got the Romulans in it, but it is a Klingon episode, which is why I didn't include it. But I mean, I don't disagree. I think Sela would probably be next just because of the recurring aspect of the character. But it's more the story the wig is, but yeah. But it's the story of the Defector that really sticks in my mind. It's a bit like Duet in terms of like when I think of the Cardassians, I think of that episode first.
Yeah.
Like this is one of those ones that it just made such a big impact on me. And I think Rich mentioned it that it's in season 3. It's a standout episode from that season. So that's it's when Next Generation was starting to come into its own, I think.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And that maybe that's the reason why.
Yeah, the Defector is ultimately of the TNG that would produce yesterday's Enterprise, the best of both worlds. It was going that way for definite. And I do also agree that it was the first time where, freed up of trying to make the Ferengi work, and with the Borg obviously waiting in the wings, I think there was a bit more freedom to make the Romulans what they are in this episode.
And it's a fucked up story when you think about it. Like, I mean, the guy ruined, what's his name, Admiral Jarek, he ruins his life. And just because they want to sort of test his loyalty.
Yeah.
And then he kills himself at the end. It's like, it's a really dark episode.
So, Paul, what's your last one?
My final one is In the Pale Moonlight.
That's mine!
I think it...
So I picked this as one of my favourite episodes. So
there it is, and Ian's just showed it's on his list too.
I think that it's... If you have to show you, we were asking earlier about what story you would pick or whatever to watch. If I was showing somebody an episode of 90s Star Trek to show production values, to show acting, to show plotting, the whole works, I would show them In the Pale Moonlight. Hands above most other episodes. Avery Brooks' performance in it is just, unbelievably good. What it also does is that very clever thing that, when I've been working as a fiction editor, you try and get, you want your subsidiary characters in a book to be reflecting aspects of the lead character and showing, so that through their actions, you're finding out more about the central people, your protagonists, whatever. And this tells us so much through the Romulans' actions, through Garak's actions, about Sisko. It tells us also a lot about the Romulans because of how Sisko thinks they'll react, how Garak knows they'll react. And there is just, you watch it and you think, that is realpolitik at its hardest. And you're thinking, this is in the sort of the context of the Berlin Wall coming down not that long before, of the whole situation with Soviet states, just where the US, where the world was at that point. And there are people, this is a John le Carré episode. This is the sort of thing.
That's a good comparison.
Yeah, this is the sort of thing.
Tinker Tailor Soldier Starship.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know if any of you read Nick Harkaway's John le Carré's son follow-up to The Smiling Ones. Highly recommended it. It's a very, very good continuation, but it's set around this same, this same sort of political background, and people having to make choices where there is no good choice.
Yeah.
And Sisko, at the end, that moment where he goes, I can live with it. I can live with it. And you realise that it's not that he has crossed the line. He's realised that the line moved and he didn't move with it. And it's those moments. And I mean, and then him thumping Garak, which is always a good moment. But
But that's the key thing as well, because we were saying about Star Trek, the essence of it before. This is what I think, again, current Trek sometimes struggles with, is this doesn't betray Roddenberry's vision.
no.
No.
Because it's not. It's in fact a full-throated examination and reiteration of his vision in the worst circumstance.
Yeah.
And that makes it extremely powerful. And it's also, for me, one of the other reasons to have it is because everything we've talked about pretty much has been the Romulans in isolation. This is incredibly good at showing where they fit.
Yes.
And the move in the chess game of the Star Trek races and allegiances and alliances and all of those things, where and how important they are, and how for the utopia to prevail, it has to lower its, or move, as you say, not lower, move its morality to be able to keep itself and its existence going.
And in the States, we call it moving the goalposts.
Yeah.
And yes,
Oh,
completely agree with you.
Yeah, same one over here. That things have to happen for the good guys to be the good guys. And DS9, the whole thing about DS9 to me is that you took it off the starship, you put it there at the center, and you had characters who were all shades of grey.
Which Garrick is the prime example as well.
And,
So, yeah.
you know, and there was something about that show. Ian, did you go on set for DS9?
I didn't. Ian did.
Multiple times, yeah.
Did you? Yeah. You know the difference in feel on it to going on Voyager, even on the same day. They were two very, very different sets and a very different interaction between the cast and all of that seen on screen.
Yeah. The claustrophobia and darkness of Deep Space Nine absolutely came through.
Yeah, I mean, DS9, you said rap, they all went back to their trailers. Voyager, they said rap, they went to craft services. And that was, these were a group of people put together on the space station. These were a group of people put together in the cast.
Whereas on TNG, they'd say rap, and then they'd eventually have to go, will you lot fuck off?
Yes.
We want to go to
break
bed.
out the cards and the poker chips.
Yeah.
And you almost, once Cisco has become that, then the whole pathway through to the final episode is set. And, is there anything that he won't do? You begin to wonder. Because once anybody, and take it into real life, once somebody will make a decision like that, then you can no longer use past precedent to judge what their next decision will be. Because there are lines that you can't take it beyond, and that is that moment. I would love, I think it's Una McCormack did a follow-up novel on it, but I would have loved a discussion a year later that we saw between Cisco and Jake about what he did in that.
Uh-huh.
How, as a
That would be
father,
fascinating.
he justified, explained.
Does Jake know? I can't remember, actually. Does Jake know that he made that choice?
No,
I don't think so. I don't think it ever.
No.
Off the top of my head, I'll say no, because I think one of us will remember it. Others obviously do, and you never know who Garrick's going to tell.
That's true.
Yeah, that was one of the great things about
It's
it.
like that time, Benjamin, when you,
Do you remember when we blew up the Romulan
Yeah.
ship?
Yeah, you compromised yourself so much just to get the Romulans in. Oh man, that blood on your hand, that green blood on your hands must be worth it.
All right, so here's an interesting thing. I was going to go with In the Pale Moonlight. I have it circled right here on my little sheet, knowing that you guys were going to pick it.
Yeah.
But for me, I'm going to go with Inter Armor Annum Silent Leges, not just because I love the Latin title. It's a terrific episode for Bashir and for Alexander Siddig. Again, we know what ended up becoming this remarkable Section 31 movie, but when they introduced Section 31, this really was interesting stuff in this episode. What is this organization? What do they stand for? Why do they want Bashir? All of the intrigue was there at the time, and we didn't get answers, which I thought was incredibly important, or enough answers, or all the answers, whatever way you want to look at it. In terms of the Romulans, you got this deep connection exposed between the Romulan Empire and the Federation. I mean, the seeds of that are in there. You had just kind of the fun stuff that I like. Romulan ale is mentioned. And very importantly, we see Romulus. We never particularly saw Romulus all that many times, right? Here we see Romulus. In terms of the performances, I thought John Fleck as Koval, the chairman of the Tal Shire, was terrific. Adrienne Barbeau had taken over the role of Kretak.
Adrienne Barbeau.
Vastly underrated actress who I loved from The Fog.
We all love Adrienne Barbeau.
And who doesn't love Adrienne Barbeau? Escape from New York, all of it. I mean, Maude. I watched Maude as a kid. Love Adrienne Barbeau. But the most important thing for me in this episode, rewatching it, because I wanted to make sure that I was making a right choice picking it over In the Pale Moonlight, was a particularly important line of dialogue. Paul, to your point about, Rome and Romans, the line literally is this what we've become? A 24th century Rome. So the connection between Rome and Romulus and Romulans is there. It's inescapable. It's clearly stated. And I just thought for those reasons, I picked it just a teeniest bit of a notch over In the Pale Moonlight. In the Pale Moonlight is the better episode. But in terms of Romulans and our conversation, I'm going to go with Inter Arma.
We have a little box of the hairs Ian splits to justify some of his choices.
But I mean, to my, as you know, when we did our favourite episodes, I picked that episode. But it didn't make my list because I didn't think there was enough Romulan stuff in it.
No.
It's interesting to hear your argument about it.
Yeah.
But.
So to sort of wrap up then, Paul, what do you think for you makes the Romulans distinctive in Star Trek?
I think they were the first attempt to create a society that was based around a system. So the honor of it, that got hijacked by the Klingons. And I think in part just because of the nature of the people who were involved in creating Next Gen and developing Next Gen was that they saw, more within the Japanese system to be able to extend it. I think the problem with the way the Romulans have been used far too many times, it's, we've done too many Klingon things. We can't. And certainly that was the logic in the 09 movie. That was the logic, I think, in Nemesis. I would love to see a proper big screen thing which actually explored their society, and have the depth to be able to do it. So I think that their problem is that they are always going to be regarded as the second tier of Trek, and you've then obviously got things like the Borg which threaten them. But as if we just stick it to proper humanoid, the ones that were set by the progenitors or whatever they call them in the chase, that they have something about them that sets them apart. But within the storytelling of Star Trek, they have too often been there to serve a purpose rather than to the stories coming out of who they are.
1000% agree.
With Klingons, we get lots of stories that come out of, this is something that they do in their society. They whack the bloody heads off people. They challenge people to this. They send their prisoners to ice planets or whatever. And, we've all been in this game long enough. We could all come up with stories on that. The Romulans, we don't.
But do you think that's, if they had a Romulan as a main character within a crew, because what you got with Worf is you got that exploration of the Klingons, so you got so much depth,
and that forced that exploration too.
Yeah. Do you think if there was a Romulan crewmate, whether we would get that kind of
possible?
Well, they tried it with Picard.
Rich. What Rich said. I mean, that was the thing. Laris just disappears. Yeah, Picard is a very different thing for me. Picard season 1 is what I thought the show they were making, and then it became Next Gen Redux, which is not the show I thought they were making. And there were opportunities there. I think if Picard season 2 had continued beyond, and I suspect Chapman's ideas for it had been followed through for seasons 2 and onwards, I think we'd have had an exploration of the Romulans in the way we're talking about. Because the synth plot line had been taken as far as it could go. The other thing that were being developed during season 1 is the Romulans. So I think that's a lost opportunity. Strange New Worlds can't do it. We know what's going on, but they are, even in Quality of Mercy, we're tied by that. We don't know what they look like. Codswallop. you can't fight you can't fight that. You can say that in 1965. You can't say that now, that there would have been any sort of possibility of that happening. If we get another Trek series that's set in this 24th, early 25th century, I mean, personally, I think Starfleet Academy will be the last gasp of this tranche of Trek. I don't think there'll be, or whatever these, the next animated is, but I think that will be it, and I think it will then have another gap where creative juices will be allowed to, ferment,
and it'll be left to the movies again to save it. That's what will happen. Is they're already talking about that.
Yeah,
it'll be a movie that's going to have to bring it back.
But it has to be a movie that does something different, not a flipping prequel, not a creation of the Federation. We've seen that. The Kelvin verse. You waste your second film on Khan, and then nobody goes to the third film, and actually the third film's fun.
I agree with that. Yeah.
But it needs something that has the impact of that movie.
So thank you, Paul, for joining us for a very interesting and actually typically harmonious Romulan debate. I often think we're going to be more controversial, and then we end up agreeing far more than we do. It must be getting really tedious for our listeners. But on that note,
I keep picking the weird ones.
Well, takes one to know one, doesn't it? So I will say thank you to Paul for joining us. It was a pleasure. And if anyone out there,
thank you, Paul.
Yeah, absolutely. If anyone out there has different opinions about Romulans and which episodes we missed, or that you think we were completely wrong about, please do get in contact. All the details are in the descriptions. Email us or contact us on social media. But otherwise, we'll see you next episode, Beyond the Final Frontier.
Peace, love, and logic, everybody.
Thanks for listening to Beyond the Final Frontier, a Star Trek podcast with Rich Matthews, Ian Spelling and Toby Weidman. If you want to get in contact with us, you can email us on beyondffpod@gmail.com or check us out on social media. You can even join our Patreon at BFF Beyond the Final Frontier. Huge thanks go out to Alex Weidman for the brilliant original music. Please search Alex Weidman Composer on YouTube to hear the full fantastic theme and more. Also thanks goes to award-winning voiceover artist Cissy Jones for our excellent opening monologue. Find out more about her incredible work at cissyjones.com. And of course, last but not least, our brilliant artwork comes from the designer Russell Seal. Discover more of his work on behance.net/Russell Seal. Thanks again, and see you next episode, Beyond the Final Frontier.